We all need to get text into InDesign sooner or later, and back in the Essential Training title, we looked at the basic method for importing text, using the place command. Let's review. I'm going to open my JavaCo magazine document from the exercises folder, and I'm going to use Option Page Down to jump to the spread I want to work with. That's Alt Page Down on Windows. I'm on page 6 and 7, and I can see that I better import some text here. I can import some text by going to the File menu, choosing Place, and then scrolling down through my links folder until I see the JavaCo NU document. This is an RTF document from Microsoft Word. Many word processors can export RTF files, though. Before I click Open, I'm going to turn on Show Import Options. I like having Show Import Options on when I am importing Word documents because it gives me many more options than I would ordinarily have. For example, it lets me choose what do I want to include. Do I want to include a table of contents or an index, footnotes, endnotes? I don't know why it lets you choose endnotes because InDesign doesn't actually have an endnotes feature, but I guess if you turned that off, it would strip out all the endnotes of the incoming document. So that might be useful somehow. My document doesn't have any of these, so I don't really care. I can choose here whether or not to convert all my straight quotes to curly quotes, typographer's quotes. And this is really the important part, the formatting section. What do I want to do with any of the formatting that's inside the document? Do I want to perhaps strip it all out, get rid of all the italics and bolds and paragraph styles and character styles and everything? Well, I could choose that if it were a really messed up document and I wanted to throw it all away. But in this case, I happen to know that this Word document has paragraph styles and character styles applied throughout the document, and I want to maintain those. So I'm going to preserve my styles and formatting from the text and tables. It then gives me all kinds of other options, and I know this seems kind of overwhelming, but if you take it one step at a time, it's really not that bad. What do you want to import? Do you want your inline graphics? I don't like importing inline graphics from Word documents. I've just seen too many weird things happen, so I usually turn this one off. I'm not going to go through all of these, it'll take too long, but you can see, do you want to convert your bullets and numbers to text and so on. I'm just going to import just like this, except for my styles. Now, ordinarily, if you have paragraph and character styles in your Word document that have exactly the same name as the InDesign document, well, then you'll match perfectly, right? The document will come in, and then InDesign throws away the Word style definitions and uses the InDesign style definition, and that's a good thing. That's typically what you want to have happen. You also have the option here to redefine your InDesign style. That means don't use the style that I've defined in InDesign, use the style that some guy defined in Word. I can't imagine why you'd want to do that, but I guess it's nice that InDesign gives you that option. I've never used this option. That seems weird to me. Auto rename could be useful if you're importing a document and you don't want to apply InDesign styles to it. I suppose you could use auto rename. But again, in the vast majority of cases, you're just going to use the InDesign style definition when you have the same style names between Word and InDesign. That's just the way it should work. But there's a problem. The problem is that in this particular InDesign document, I have put my paragraph styles inside folders. As we learned in the Essential Training title, you can actually nest styles inside folders, and that's a nice way to keep track of them. But the problem is that when you do that and you import a Word document that has styles, InDesign can't see those styles anymore. It doesn't know inside which folder the styles are living. So you have to use Customize Style Import. This is a very powerful feature. This is also extremely useful when you are importing a Word document or any kind of RTF file where the style names in that document do not match the InDesign document exactly. For example, if you're working on, let's say, a medical journal, and you have 50 different people sending you documents, and they all have their own way of styling. They all have their own names that they use for their paragraph styles. Well, you can use Customize Style Import to map their names to your names. Very, very cool. When you turn this on, you can click on the Style Mapping button, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then you can map their style name to your style name. In this case, I'm going to map article subhead, which is the name of the style inside the Word document, to article subhead, but inside my headings folder. I'll do the same thing with body text. Body text is going to map to body text inside my body sizes folder. InDesign was smart enough to map the bold italic character style that I used in the Word document with the bold italic character style in InDesign, and it was able to make that match because this character style is not inside a folder. I'll click OK here, and I'm also going to save this as a preset. I love the fact that you can save all of these settings in this Import Options dialog box as a preset, so that each time I import a document like this, I can just choose a preset out of the preset pop-up menu. I'll call this one my happy preset. Obviously, you can call it anything you want to. I'll click OK, and you can see it shows up here in the preset pop-up menu. When I click OK, InDesign gives me the place cursor. As we talked about in the essential training title, I can simply click with this cursor on top of a text frame, and InDesign fills that whole text frame and any frames that are threaded to it automatically. So in this case, I had 4 text frames created. I had this big one here, and then 3 other text frames over on the right page. They were all threaded together, so it filled it all. But I want to show you a few other placing options that have to do with that place cursor. So I'm going to actually delete all of these, just so you can see what's going on here. And I'm going to place that again with Command-D or Control-D on Windows. I'll choose the file that I want to create. I'll make sure Import Options is turned on. And I'll click OK. And now I get the import options again. I can pull my preset right out of here, so I don't have to worry about mapping all of these a second time. Click OK. It loads the place cursor. And now I don't have any text frames to drop this text into. What do? Well, I could simply click, and that creates a single frame and makes it the width of the current column, and then it stops, so you can see that the text is now overset. But there are other place options too. I'm going to undo that with Command-Z or Control-Z on Windows. I'm going to place this, but with a modifier key held down. So I'm going to move over here and hold down the Option key or the Alt key on Windows. And now the cursor changes very subtly. You may not be able to see that, but it's going to create a frame, it's going to drop the text into it, and it's going to automatically reload that place cursor. Right? And now I could do the same thing. Option click. That's very handy for if you want to make a bunch of frames at a time. Or it doesn't have to make a frame. If the frames were already there, it would fill the frame and then reload the place cursor as soon as it runs out of space, as soon as it becomes overset. So that's pretty cool. Let me undo that a couple times and just show you one more option. I'm going to show you what happens if I do a shift click. Shift click will automatically fill all the columns, and it will keep filling columns and keep adding pages until all the text is loaded. So shift click will load up all of the columns, and it'll keep adding pages until all the text is there. In this case, it didn't have to add pages because it ran out of text. But that's a good one to know about. That's very handy, shift click. And the last modifier key I want to show is, I'll undo that one more time, and I'm going to come back here and Option shift click or Alt shift click. This one is very obscure. I'll go ahead and Option shift click or Alt shift click. And this one looks like the shift click, but there's one difference. It won't add additional pages. It simply loads all the columns, but it won't add extra pages. That's a good one to know about as well. I'm going to place my cursor inside the text here by double-clicking on it. That switches to the Type tool. I'll zoom into 200%, which is Command-2 on the Mac or Control-2 on Windows. And let me look at my Paragraph Styles panel. I can see that inside the panel here, there's a little plus sign. And as we learned in the Essential Training title, that means there's local formatting here. And if you hover on top of that, you get a little tooltip. And the tooltip says that in this case, there's local formatting called Kinsoku, which is a Japanese feature. I have no idea why that's here, and I have to say this is probably a bug somewhere. And it happens sometimes, it doesn't happen other times. You get these weird local overrides, and I can't figure out what is going on here, but it does sometimes happen. There's a trick, there's a way to get around it or to remove those local overrides. The tooltip tells you what you can do to remove those overrides. It says Option click to clear. But that's a little bit misleading, because that means if I Option click on that style, it removes the local override just from that one paragraph. Well, that means I would have to Option click on each individual paragraph in this story, which is going to be very, very time-consuming and frustrating. So I don't really want to do that. Instead, there's an easier way. Press Command-A or Control-A on Windows, and that selects all the text in the whole story. And then click on the Clear Overrides button. This little button in the Paragraph Styles panel is very, very useful. It simply removes all the local overrides from everything that is selected. There we go. It's gone. Now, wherever I click, I don't get that little plus sign anymore. I'm going to show you a little bit more extreme example of this. In this case, I'm going to delete all this text and place a new file. This is a more extreme example of this same local formatting problem. I'm going to place this file called javaco and u bad. That's the bad version. And I'm going to click open. The import options was still turned on, so I can still use my preset here. Click OK, and it imports everything. I can already tell there's going to be problems. There's some font which is not available here, Georgia Medium. I don't know what that is. That's okay. I'll click OK. We can see a bunch of the text got turned to pink. This heading is completely wrong. Down here, this little plus sign, we can hover over that and see that, oh yeah, we've got the wrong size, we've got the wrong font, it's centered when it shouldn't be, and so on. This is obviously the wrong font, and so on and so on. This is all very bad. So if this happens to you, you import some text and everything's wrong, again, select all of it, Command A on the Mac or Control A on Windows, and click on Remove Overrides. Now, all of the overrides have been removed, and we're back to something nice and clean and beautiful, which is great. Now, there is one thing I want to point out here. Joel Smith. That text, you may remember that was in italic. It was supposed to be italic. As we saw in the Essential Training title, when you remove all the overrides, it also removes any italic or bold words in your text. So if you need to keep those, you'd better apply an italic or bold character style to them first. Nevertheless, this Clear Overrides feature does solve most of the problems people have when they're importing text into their InDesign documents.